Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm David Nilssen, the host of this show. On the Future is Borderless, we connect with global business leaders who I think are unbound by traditional thinking and those that I think are challenging the status quo. Our mission is to uncover innovative ideas, cutting edge advancements, and proven strategies, the fuel that we need for our personal and professional lives. And the goal here is to make sure that we're equipping ourselves with things that we need to thrive in a constantly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by Doxa Talent. Doxa helps businesses to source full-time, highly skilled workers from all over the world. And as a result, these companies can scale faster, increase margin, and improve culture. They provide everything from accountants to sales development reps, virtual assistants, even software engineers to publicly traded companies and local small businesses. If you want to learn how to grow your business with offshore talent, simply visit doxatalent.com. All right. Well, I'm excited for our program today. I'm going to welcome Carey Gille, the CEO of Franchise FastLane, as our guest today. And she has a really extensive background in the franchise industry, which includes working on both the franchisee and the franchisor sides with 3 different franchise concepts and leading development for multiple brands. One of Carey's early entrepreneurial successes was co-founding a company called ItsDeductable, which was later acquired by Intuit and remains an integral tool for TurboTax users even today. She also co-founded an organization, I think it's Sojern, is that right?
Sojern, yes.
Sojern. Okay, great. And today, that's the largest boarding pass and travel data advertiser in the world. Now, most recently, she started Franchise FastLane, which is a franchise sales organization, or FSO, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, because I know many of our listeners won't be as familiar with what that is. But they are dedicated to driving extraordinary growth for select high-quality brands. And today, it's the #1 FSO in the country, boasting over 50 employees, representing 20 brands, and having awarded more than 5,000 territories nationwide. And for those of you that aren't in franchising, that is a torrid pace. In 2022, Southfield Capital acquired FastLane, and that further solidified its position in the industry. So with all of that, Carey, welcome to the Future is Borderless.
It's so good to be here, David. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to have you. I do want to talk about franchising and what you're doing at FastLane. Yeah. But since I mentioned in your bio that you've started and sold multiple companies, specifically in tech, I want to just ask, curious about your experience as a tech entrepreneur and how that has influenced the success that you've seen in franchising and with FastLane.
Absolutely. It's an interesting story. So let me back up a bit. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I just remember that from the time I was in high school, just deciding I want to have my own vision, my own dream, leave a legacy for my kids, impact communities. It was just a desire from the very beginning. I didn't know what franchising was. So in my mind, David, that was startup. Right? I would go start something. Tech was the booming industry, right? That was the it thing then, was technology. And so I partnered with a couple gentlemen that we were all kind of graduating about the same time, very young. And we started a business called ItsDeductable, as you mentioned. And the whole premise of this company was, if you accurately valued the items you gave to charity, then you could benefit from a larger tax break, and you're also benefiting the others, right, through your donation. And so it was an absolute startup. We had a license with an accountant in Lincoln who wrote this valuation workbook. We turned it into software, and we had no marketing budget. We were literally officing out of it's so fun to think about it. We were officing out of McDonald's. I mean, it was just brand new. And so we had no marketing budget. And so in the absence of that, I wrote a press release. I was straight out of college, and we started sending that around to local media. And pretty soon I was traveling. It was a unique evening news story, especially around tax time, was, did you know that if you valued your items, here's what you can do? This is the deduction you can get. So I started traveling, and probably because I was too young and dumb to know any better, I sent it to the Wall Street Journal, probably because I didn't even know to be naive. And I'm never going to forget the day that I was walking out of a local interview and my phone rang, and I answered it, and it was a girlfriend. And she said, "Carey, you're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal." They didn't call me. They didn't warn us. It was above the fold, the written Wall Street Journal, the physical copy. And it took off that day. We had maybe sold 400 copies, total. And that day it was like that Super Bowl commercial where it just absolutely took off. Wow. And it was an amazing experience. And so as we continued, then I spent a lot of time in New York City as a tax expert on CNN Headline News, MSNBC, US News and World Report, almost 2 years just as a spokesperson for that company. Absolutely. It's ironic now looking back because I had maybe filed my own taxes independent of my parents one or two times. And all of a sudden, you know what I mean?
Yep.
H&R Block took note and we started negotiating partnership with them when Intuit called. And that is Scott Cook. He's a corporate icon. And we sold the company to Intuit. I stayed for 5 years. It was a bit of a square peg, round hole, but I still learned a lot during that time. I reported directly into Scott Cook and I got to present to him on a quarterly basis, learned about Net Promoter, voice of the customer. That's when I started Sojern during that time as well. But I was anxious to get back home to the Midwest. I was living in California, pretty much going back and forth. And I heard of Ryan Zink and he had this company called Complete Nutrition.
Yeah.
The franchise. And I didn't know franchising, but it was fitness. I love fitness. That's how I start every day. And we went to lunch. He knew I was anxious to get home. My 5 years were up, and I wanted to be back in something entrepreneurial. And he said, we want to sell 20 locations over the next 20 months or so. Put my head down, got to work, came on as CDO, and we sold 240 locations. And so that company, I bought 3 of my own, fell in love with franchising. And this really brings me to my favorite definition in all of Webster's dictionary, which is vision, which is a clear and compelling picture, which is corporate America, clear, compelling, 3% raise a year, so many days of vacation, benefits package, right? But of a preferable future. What does that make you think of? That makes you think of business ownership, being at your kids' games, leaving a legacy. Vision is those two things together. And when I found franchising, I went, whoa, this is both. This is a business model I can follow that's been proven by franchisees, with a 5-year plan, but the opportunity to be a business owner, I was smitten. I've never looked back. Franchising has been my end game since then.
Yeah. So how is that? So how did, you got involved in Complete Nutrition, and since then you've been involved with lots of different brands and then started FastLane, which we'll talk about here in just a second ago. But what did the technology world provide you that maybe is unique and interesting and has sort of been a catalyst of some of the success that you've seen?
Good question. Technology is all about thinking about what isn't there yet, cutting edge. And when we started Franchise FastLane, there was a bit of a standard model for an FSO, a bit of a, find somebody with a big reputation and put them on the phone and put them to work. And we came in, and we'll talk about it in a minute. I know we built a model that was completely different based upon technology and, technology for the consultants, for our leads to follow through the process. And it was so differentiated. And I really think learning all of that in my early tech days, I was able to apply that to a new model that was very different, but it differentiated our offering.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So many of the people that listen to the podcast know that I started a company called Guidance Financial, which is very, does a lot of work in the franchise space. So I was there when you guys sort of made your splash and hit the scene, and 5,000 awards later, which is just mind blowing. It's just impressive to see what you guys have done. So I think what would be really helpful, though, before we go much further, Franchise FastLane is an FSO. We talked about franchise sales organization, but most of our listeners probably won't know exactly what that is. So do you mind just sort of sharing where the FSO fits and why they're needed?
It's really a good question. And you're right, it is confusing if franchising isn't your world. Our slogan is, you drive your business, we'll drive your growth. And obviously that's brand facing. So the premise of this concept is there are many franchise brands out there. And I talked to 191 last year to find the 8 that we onboarded. So very familiar with their challenge. You get a franchise brand owner on the phone, somebody who started a brand, they're ready to grow now nationwide, and you ask them about their business. And David, you could walk away from the phone. They are pumped up, right? They are excited and they are talking about, this is what I do, and here's how my brand's differentiated. But then when you ask the question, how do you plan to grow? How do you want to find the right people to carry the flag of your brand into markets nationwide? And I am not kidding. Every time it's crickets.
It's like, if I build it, they will come.
Right. They do not know. And of course, this is their brand. Somebody's going to represent whatever they built in a market far, far away. It has to be the right match. It has to be the right franchisee with the right franchisor. And so it needs to be a very articulated, clear system by which we find those franchisees and make that match, and they don't know how to do it. So that's what we are. We're an FSO. We represent the brand and we bring that brand out to potential business owners. We explain what it is. We talk through the FDD. We introduce that brand, and then we find the right fit for that brand. And we help people go through a full discovery process. It takes somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks where we educate them on the brand. They come to a confirmation day so they can see it, meet the leadership, and then they make a decision. It's a little bit like real estate, where if you think about buying a new home, there's usually a real estate agent that represents you as the buyer, but there's also a real estate agent that represents the home, right? That represents the seller. And that's a bit what we are. We are representing the seller because we want to help them grow strategically with the right people and in a healthy manner nationwide.
Yeah. So it's funny. You said something a second ago that is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
You said you talked to 190 plus
Yeah.
brands and you chose 8. So that automatically, I can do the math, right? 4% acceptance rate. Tell me, what is it about the 4% versus the 96 that makes you say yes?
Isn't that also just astounding how many brands are reaching out? I will answer your question as well, but we do not have an outbound marketing strategy at all for brand recruiting. So that is organic. Those are brands who heard what we do and have seen the success and the ranking with Entrepreneur and Inc. 500 and others, and have said, how do I get in there? How do I figure this out? How do I grow like FastLane brands are growing? So there's a need for this. So we have a list of necessities and niceties that our leadership team put together because we realized very quickly into the company, brands are going to be asking us for help. How do we choose the brands that are right? We call our brands the next big thing. And we talked to a number of brands to find it. And it's everything from, first of all, the financial strength to support the growth we will usher in, because our brands grow anywhere from 40 to even 200 territories per year. So that takes the financial strength. Many of them are backed by private equity, and that's how they can do that. Or they have an investor. But first, we prove that out. Then we look for a differentiated business model. I'm sorry, but if you're just another house painting company, I'm going to have a tough time making you sound any different than all the noise already in that space, right? So we look for something that's absolutely differentiated. And then honestly, we really dive into that FDD. We'll talk about the FDD, the franchise disclosure document, but we make sure the investment is reasonable, that there's an item 19 that shows proven earnings for franchisees. We call the franchisees that are already there to make sure that they're happy in the system. Those are really the things that we're looking at. How long is the return on investment? We really do. I mean, I think our brand vetting process is at this point 4 to 5 months. We fly out, we meet them. Are these the kind of people we want to work with? So that by the time we say Franchise FastLane just signed a new brand, I can walk in with real strong confidence that this is a brand that's ready to represent the FastLane and FastLane to represent them.
Wow. I mean, it's not surprising to me. Again, as I shared earlier, the fact that you guys have awarded 5,000 territories, that is unheard of. So I can see that would, word travels fast, and I can see why people would be knocking down your door, but it's still, I love the discipline behind the acceptance rate. We do this at Doxa where, of all the virtual assistants that apply, only 1% get accepted. And that just means that we have a high bar. And that means, similar for you guys, that means that you're likely representing those brands that are best in class. Not only good for the brands, but also good for the people that are choosing to invest in those things. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. We all want to call 5 years from now that says, thank you. Thank you. You changed my life. I spent 30 years in corporate America. I didn't think I had the courage to leave. I found this brand. It's a perfect fit. And today my family is so grateful. And here's why. That's the call you want. And that's only going to happen if you work with the right brands.
100%. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your values. I'm just curious, like what are the core values of the business? I'm assuming that they represent your own, and like, how have they sort of like helped influence the decisions you guys have made?
You're right. This is big. This is a big part of who we are as an organization. It's literally in our DNA. Our mission is to drive extraordinary growth for the chosen few. You talked about that. Drive extraordinary growth for the chosen few. Now, when we worked on that, it was drive extraordinary growth for our brands. No, we don't just drive growth for brands. We drive growth for franchisees who come in and grow who they are in their profession and who they are in their career and their families. We drive growth for everybody who's in the fast lane, right? Everybody who's out there, either whether you're running territory checks or whatever you're doing, we're growing you as a fast lane employee. So that's when we came up with something a bit more generic and vague in nature, which is the chosen few. So we're going to find the right people in the fast lane, the right brands, and then the right franchisees. and for our consultant partners who obviously bring us those franchisees. We want to be driving growth for their businesses as well. So that mission was chosen, and every word was carefully selected in line with what we do. And then we have a vision to set industry standards. We want to be the one thinking of the next thing first. And that's through some of our software and the brands that we've brought on and some of the new programs we've introduced to the industry. But then we have 5 core values. And you talk about, Carey, how have those changed over the years? We started with 4. And let me talk about those 4, and then I'll get to the 5th one. The first one is be gritty, be hungry, bring it. Be gritty, be hungry, bring it. If you're in the fast lane, I don't care what your role is. I mean, last week we had one day where we ran almost 1,200 territory checks in one day. One day. Wow. That support specialist that's having to keep up with 1,200 territory checks, it's amazing. Yeah. So I don't care if you're in that or you're in sales or you're in marketing, everybody has their heads down and they have to be gritty, be hungry, bring it. No surprises. Surprises are great if it's your birthday, but in most cases in our day-to-day work, something hit you in the middle of the day, we work really hard. I think maybe that's the core value it's hardest to live up to. No surprises. That requires clear communication, clear planning. David, it's a tough one. Drive fast results. We work hard to drive fast results, have each other's back, and a team that's moving this fast. If you're not willing to help somebody who has a need that day, or somebody who needs to take the day off because something happened with their family, it's so important. Have each other's back. And then the last one, we were probably 2-3 years in with those 4 core values, and we kept meeting as a leadership team and thinking something's missing. They're all internal. What we do every day that we're so passionate about is this life change that we drive through those 5,000 territories. I love that stat, but why do I love that stat? Because it represents life change. It's not about the stat, it's the life change. And so we added our 5th one, which is inspire life change. And like I said, they're literally in our DNA. They really are. We nominate them for each other. When we see them exemplified throughout the week, we put in a nomination in Namely, which is our system. And then when we have our team meetings, we pull a name out and we do a drawing. You get a $50 gift card. And so it's just part of every meeting, because I think those core values have to be what brings our organization together as we align and to continue to deliver value for our partners.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you guys added some. I think some people think about values as something that you sit on a wall and it just cement. And I do think that to some degree, those should be non-negotiable and they should last last through time. But, at times you learn. We added one around diversity and inclusion at one point too, because we realized that was one that we valued, but we weren't actually asserting well enough within our own organization. So I love the no surprises, by the way. I'm a big fan of surprises as long as people give me a heads up in advance, but it's
as long as
totally get it. I actually just want to go one step further, because you were talking about values, and I think you did a great job of also just sort of sharing some experiences there in terms of how you think about employee engagement. But how, in today, I mean, people are struggling to find talent if they can find it. They're struggling to afford it if they can afford it. They're struggling to retain it. How do you guys think about nurturing culture, and where do you sit on this all in the office versus remote versus hybrid discussion?
Honestly, if I only had 10 seconds to answer the question of, Carey, what did you do right when you started this? You know what I would say? People is what we did right. So the question you just asked is so important. We could have come up with the right core values. We could have come up with, an amazing strategy. But if you don't have the right people in the fast lane, the right partners, both on the brand side and on the consultant side, we wouldn't be where we are today. So the question you're asking is the right one. Culture is so important. And as we've continued to grow, we keep coming back to, are we retaining the culture? We do biannual reviews. And I have to tell you, we're at nearly 60 employees. And the most common themed feedback we had on the positive side, we always ask, what are we doing well? What do we need to improve on? We ask that every year, was your culture, you're preserving culture as we grow. You continue to preserve culture as we grow. And I think even though you're kind of like, why are we looking at core values again? We meet every other week, and that's the top of every meeting. Why do we talk about how a consultant saw this exemplified? Because that's why we have to be so committed to where we came, right? We have to be so committed to that. I also think when you think about, Carey, how do you get this talent? If you think about franchise development, if you're really good at what you do in our career, typically, if you work directly for a brand, and I did this at Complete Nutrition, you're going to sell yourself right out of a job. right? So when I was with Ryan at Complete Nutrition, when we sold those 220 territories overnight, he walked into my office and said, Carey, stop. We have to stop. We have to get them all open. Do you want to lead marketing? And I went, no, that's not what I love. I love franchise development, you know? And so in the FastLane, the nice thing is we can bring in an expert like Don Terranelli, who had sold himself out of a job multiple times. We can bring him on, and now he's on his third brand in the FastLane because he did such a great job with brand one and brand two that we're always going, what are we going to bring Don? Because he is so good at what he does. So now he can sit in the FastLane and I can just keep bringing him home runs and he can just keep hitting them.
Oh yeah.
And so
that's amazing.
you know,
That's funny. In my experience in franchising through Guidant, we used to say same person, different logo. And I never really connected the two of them, but you're right. If they're successful in their role, they can't be there long because at some point the brand sort of the growth curve for the brand is going to shift. Right. So
it will shift.
That's hysterical. All right. So do tell me, like, how do you guys think about office space?
Office. First of all, I want to clarify that if you're in sales in the FastLane, you don't live in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where our headquarters are. Salespeople can live anywhere. Why shouldn't they? They're Zooming all day, just like you and I are doing right now, and they're talking to people about their brand. Yeah. And so we're already a remote organization. Half the team works every day from their home office. Half the team. However, we have a leadership team and a support and marketing team, which is about half of those 60 that are in Omaha, that are the infrastructure, the backbone of what those salespeople do every day. Yeah. And so they're all in Omaha. And we were in the office 5 days a week before the pandemic hit. And of course, everybody had to adjust. And so everybody went home, and we provided equipment and we sent people home. Everybody had their own computer, their own monitors. And I was worried about it. I really was. And in 2020 was our best year. And I think it is because franchising is really enticing to people who start to see corporate risk, right? It was our best year. And so we did well, whether we were remote, whether we had a flex schedule, or whether we were home. So when we went back and we just have a new office, we actually have only been in our new office for 2 weeks now. And it's a wonderful office. I love it there, but we only require in-office Monday through Wednesday. Everybody works home Thursday through Friday. So it's a flex schedule that allows you to be in the office and collaborate with your coworkers 3 days a week. But if you need to switch the laundry in between calls, you can do that on Thursday and Friday and be home with your puppy. And I think it's healthy.
Awesome. Well, I think it's great that you guys have defined sort of how that works. I think a lot of people are still struggling through it, which is why I like to ask the question. So that's great. Tell me a little bit about recently you guys took on private equity. What does that mean for the company and its future? Like, what do you expect from FastLane going forward?
Yeah, I was really excited about this stage. You're right. It happened in May of last year. Southfield Capital is the name of the company. They partner with growing companies in the middle market, right where we're at. And so what we're excited about is not only do they bring us more financial strength, because they do, but they're investors, they're managers, they're advisors, and they have a proven track record. And so we were thrilled from the moment that happened. In the FastLane, like I said, we drive extraordinary growth. But then our relationship with that franchisee stops at the signing of the franchise agreement. And so what I'm excited about Southfield is we've built an incredible platform, but we need to expand it. We would like to help with, things like organic marketing, which really we don't do today, consulting for field support, Z marketing, insurance, bookkeeping, payroll, credit card processing. I'd like to be able to provide more services for our brands, whether it's through acquisition of companies, whether it's through partnerships. And we just weren't able to do that on our own. And Southfield is very enthused around that. In fact, since we started partnering with them, we've already launched 2 major programs that are new to us. One of them is our mastermind program. So now our brands meet on a regular basis at a platform that we provide, and we have a moderator, and they're learning and growing together, which is, it just started, and the feedback I'm getting is really remarkable. Because you can imagine, we signed them. They're the best brands in franchising. I think we carefully selected them. And then they all face the same challenge of keeping up with expedited growth because they're all in the FastLane. So why aren't they learning and growing? How do you set up a call center, right? They should learn from one another. Who are the right manufacturers for my rig? So all those little things, they sound small, but they're big when you're trying to open that many territories in a year. So we launched that, and we're launching a carpool program. And the premise of that one is there are some brands out there who don't want to be in the FastLane. They don't want to grow at 50 plus territories a year. They need to grow at 10. They need to grow at 15, 20. And so what they do is they come in and they sit on our infrastructure, our support, our technology, HubSpot, our CRM. They're coached by a coach that we have in the FastLane that's been in development for many years, but they keep their development in-house. In-house. It's not a FastLaner on the phone for them every day. Their development's in-house. And they just sit on our infrastructure. So they're organized, they're accountable to a calendar, their territory checks are done for them, their leads are registered. They wake up just like our directors and their calendar's all done. They just follow the plan. So we're just launching that. We're actually still in our trial program with 10 brands and it's going really well. So there's an example of just a couple ways that we're expanding on what we've built because of our partnership with Southbill.
I think that's so smart. So you guys are transitioning from a service to a platform
Yeah.
with investment. That's great.
Yeah.
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 Super smart. I can see why there would be a lot of need for that because you're right. There's a lot of franchisors who go through FSOs and they're, the FSO like a FastLane can be a catalyst to super high growth. And some of the brands, unfortunately don't prepare well for that. And I think, giving people a path to more sustainable growth is probably a good thing for a lot of brands.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right,
And I
well,
think it'll be an on-ramp, off-ramp. I think we'll have some in the carpool that eventually go, okay, now I do want to be, and then we'll have some in the fast lane that say, okay, I'm pretty much sold out around the country. How about I bring it in-house? I think it'll help our brands transition too.
Yeah, I think that's right. And well, you saw it at Complete Nutrition, right? You sell 200 and some odd
Right.
units, and now you're like, whoa, we got to open these, make sure that we support the franchisees, right? So that people may shift between them as well. That's fascinating. All right. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit. I love asking entrepreneurs about the mistakes that they've made that they like really learn from. I'm just curious if there's something in your, something that comes to mind. For me, it's always like how I handled the '08 crisis. Like when the pandemic came, I felt like I was absolutely prepared because I really failed in '08. I'm just curious, like if there's something just, in your experience where you're like, what, that is a lesson that I probably didn't play out the way that I wanted to, but boy, it sure helped me long-term.
I learned a great deal. There's a couple things that come to mind. We all have mistakes we can talk about, right?
Yeah.
So when the company sold to Intuit, I agreed to stay for a number of years. And I look back on that now, and I think it helped me grow into who I am. I think that time in corporate America helped me be better in my commitment to franchising today, because it really gave me discipline to understand one side of the market that many of the franchisees that call us today, they're working in corporate America. And I have a perspective now, and I can relate with that, because I'm not sure I ever would have landed there if it wouldn't have been for that acquisition.
Yeah.
So maybe that was a bit of a mistake to agree to a timeline. Then again, it like you said, it then contributes to who you are later as a professional. So maybe that. Another one that just comes to mind right away is after Sojern, and as I was finding my home in franchising, I had another startup that I got pulled into primarily as a favor to others. And I stayed for about 18 months and I didn't love it. And it didn't inspire me. It didn't make me want to get out of bed in the morning. Even if it was the right title, because it was the right title, I just didn't love it. And I'm sorry, 18 months is too long to stay in a role that you don't love, that doesn't just give you goosebumps from time to time, that you don't want to be on a podcast talking about.
Yeah, totally.
It's just a mistake. And it's not what I want my kids to do when they watch me in my career. So I see that as a mistake. If you don't get up in the morning, you don't go, this is what I do, this is why I love it, and this is why I want to continue to do that, and this is how it impacts others, move on.
Yeah. I have a similar philosophy. I always say, if you don't like the people you work with, believe in what you do and feel like you're growing as a person, there's a better job somewhere else, right? Like there's a better opportunity. But like the whole idea for us in culture is like, you got to really like the company you work for and what they're trying to achieve and the problems that they're solving and the people that you work with. Otherwise, what's the point? So
move on. Yeah.
Move on. I love it. Yep. Tell me about, so that was sort of what did you learn from it? Like, what are the things that you love most about your role today?
The favorite part of my role, I have 3 sons. I talked about my kids. I have 3 sons. And when I go back to that vision, again, that clear and compelling picture of a preferable future, what I want, they're my why. They're my why. I mean, on top of the 5,000 territories and the life change we're growing across the country for brands and for franchisees, we've had 7 brands now sell to private equity. So think about that life change that we not only drove for that brand's family, but also the 5,000 territories now around the country and communities. Outside of what we're doing on a larger mission, it's those 3 boys, and they watch me every day. And I want them to find vision someday. I don't want them to see me in a 9 to 5 that I don't love and to not come to the dinner table without an exciting story. And so they see that. They see that in me is that vision. My oldest son, I have a big age gap in my kids. My youngest is only 10. My oldest is 21, just turned 21. And he told me just at the end of a semester recently, he said, Mom, I got the highest score on my statistics final. And he was kind of laughing because he never saw that as a skill of his. And he said, look at this. And they bring it all up on an app. That score at the top here, that's mine. That's what I got. And, right away I went, wow. But was I at all tempted to say, you should be an actuary or a statistician? No, because David, he doesn't love that. That's why he was astounded he got the high score, because it's not his love. It's not his passion. This kid traveled with me when he was little and told me he wanted to be a pilot. He now flies 3 times a week. He just passed his commercial license. What does he want to do? He wants to fly planes. And I don't care if aviation is a bad decision from a compensation perspective compared to being an actuary. None of those things matter. What matters is what he wants to do and what he can't stop talking about when he's home for break. And that's aviation. So I want to show my kids vision. And I feel like this role here at FastLane allows me to do that. It's probably my favorite part of the role is simplifying that.
I love that. I love that because, with kids, you don't recognize how much you're modeling. And so even that, like, how you enjoy your work world, which you spend more time at work than you will probably do with your family. At least most people do, right?
Oh, you do.
They've got to see that is something that's fulfilling and it's not taking, right? So
yeah, you do.
It's funny right now. I've got, I'm a little bit, I should say my kids are a little younger and then I've got a 6 and a 5-year-old. And right now we're dreaming of becoming butterfly catchers and unicorn hunters. So I can't wait to get to that point in my life.
I'm sure there's vision in there somewhere.
Well, it's vision. I don't want to, I'm not going to critique it. Well, hey, I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I do want to just end, a lot of people that I come in contact with are either right on the cusp of starting a business or already starting to validate, whether they have product market fit, just wonder if there's a lesson that you could share through your own entrepreneurial journey that would help a new or aspiring entrepreneur.
I'm going to throw out a couple books and then a quote that inspires me. I'm a reader. I read over 150 books last year. I just feel like when you stop learning, you stop growing, right? And so as an organization right now, we're reading StoryBrand, and that's building a story brand. It is so, so good. And I think no matter what your career, you should read this one, because I think so many of us have the wrong impression of how we should communicate what we do and who the hero should be in our story, because we think it should be us and we shouldn't be the hero. We should be the guide. And you'll read all that in StoryBrand. So I think that's a really big one. Our leadership team is reading Make Big Happen. And that's a really good one too, all about growth and how to drive that growth. And I love Good to Great. That's just a good one. I'm sorry about the flywheel and getting growth going. So there's a couple books that have really inspired me. But when I was in business college, there was a quote that hit me, and it's an old one. It's Henry Ford, but it's whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And as I say that to you, there's a poster right here in my office that says that. There's another one downstairs in my home gym when I'm on that 5th mile, right? It has just continued to inspire me. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. It all starts with that. And at 22, I was pretending I was a tax expert on CNN headline news. It doesn't make sense, but I believed I could. At Intuit, I led a team of programmers at a very young age. At Sojern, we got all the airlines on the same platform. At Complete Nutrition, we set a goal of 20 territories and we sold 220. And now we've built an FSO that looked nothing like the FSOs before us. And we have over 50 employees and almost 30 brands in the 5,000 territories. It is a mindset. And I think even when you said, Carey, what's a mistake you made? I think in that other role, I never believed it. I was just going to work every day. But when you find a vision that you're excited about it, and then you believe you can do it, man, I mean, get out of the way. You're going to get her done.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it there. We've been listening to Carey Gille, the CEO of Franchise FastLane. Carey, where can people go to learn more about the work that you're doing?
Yes, franchisefastlane.com is the best. We have a number of handles and we're in all of them, but franchisefastlane.com is the right place to start.
Awesome. And we'll put that and the book recommendations that you gave
I love that.
Show notes. So thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.